This is Duane Roen with McKeeman, August 24th, 2023 at the Pyle Recreation Center in Tempe. Thank you so much, Ann, for joining us this evening.
My pleasure. Looking forward to talking with you.
And we're looking forward to your story. So tell us when and where you were born.
I was actually born in Tucson, but we only lived there about a year, and then we moved to Tempe in 1955. And my family was in Tempe until my mom passed in 2011, and my sister lived in Tempe, and she just passed away last year.
Okay.
So there's no one left in Tempe.
Okay.
We all kind of left the city one way or another.
Okay. And what brought you to Tempe?
My parents lived in Canada, the eastern side of Canada, Quebec area, New Brunswick. My dad worked for the railroad, Canadian Railroad, and he got tuberculosis sometime in the early 50s. I'm not too sure of the time frame. And they had mentioned to him that he might want to consider living in a warmer climate after he recuperated. He couldn't work for a year. And my three older siblings were born in Canada as well, and they were exposed to it as long as my mom was too. So my mom's sister had moved to Arizona, so they decided to come visit them just to check it out. And they loved it. And in 1955, they moved to Arizona, but they couldn't get a job in Tempe, so they lived in Tucson for a while. My dad got hired with Southern Pacific Railroad. 9 months later, they were able to transfer up to Tempe, and my dad worked for Southern Pacific. Very short time at the Tempe depot, the really old one that used to be Depot Cantina. Mm-hmm. He worked a little bit there, but it's mostly downtown Phoenix. Mm-hmm. And that depot is now a historic, which I just had a tour of it in March.
Oh, cool.
They allowed us to go in and tour it.
Yeah. Do you have any other memories of your dad's experiences working with the railroad?
Oh, lots. That was our life. We got to ride trains for free to California all the time because my older brother moved to California. He had a train room. My other brother has a train room. It was a huge thing for us. So there's a lot of memories wrapped around trains. Mm-hmm. So when Depot Cantina closed, it kind of, well, that's another piece of history that's gone.
Yeah.
But yeah, trains were a huge thing for us.
Yeah. Was there anything special that you miss about the depot?
I think it's not being able to share it with my kids. Mm-hmm. Right before my dad retired in 1984 in Tucson, he was in Tucson, I called him. I said, my kids have never been on a train. What's the likelihood? So he set up to meet me in Phoenix with the kids. We got to ride the train to Tucson, spend the night, and came back. My son got him up in the engine. We rode in the caboose. So it really made their day, because it was the only time they have ever been in a train. Or it was just like a regular lifestyle for me. Mm-hmm. But yeah, we really miss it.
Okay.
And the train station in Phoenix is historic, but someone bought it and they're going to turn it into an event venue.
Oh. Okay.
They actually reserved it for Super Bowl last year, so it's in progress right now, but it's very cool.
Okay. Is there anything else about your dad's experiences with the railroad that you...
Oh my gosh.
That stand out for you?
He worked all around Arizona because for some reason he left the Phoenix station and went to Casa Grande, Gila Bend, filled in all over the valley. So he started traveling quite a bit in like the early 70s, late 60s. Which meant he also worked two jobs. He worked at a grocery store down on Mill Avenue as well. So it became hard for the family because he wasn't home that much.
Okay. What was the grocery store?
Shelley's.
All right.
They actually lived upstairs to the grocery store, the family. They went to our church, and we were very close to the family. So he worked as a butcher in there part-time. There was a lot of memories there as well, because I used to go to work with my dad. He worked at the Chandler train station for a while. I used to go, we used to play bumper cars in the rolling chairs in the waiting room. It was just a lot of fun. I went to work with my dad all the time, because they allowed it back then.
That's cool.
Yeah.
So, say more about the grocery store. What are some of the memories for the grocery store?
Well, my parents were godparents to one of the kids, and they all lived upstairs at the grocery store. And the funny story about that is my dad used to cut up whole chickens, because back then it was cheaper to buy a whole chicken. And he taught me, it was the first thing I learned as like 12 years old, how to cut up a chicken. I mean, that's not something a child normally is taught, but I was glad, that I learned how to do it because it saved money when I got married. Mm-hmm. So we also used to when I'd go to work with him or go to pick up his check, we'd stop at Lair's Drugs, which was right down on the corner, and get cherry phosphates, and then walk down to Shelley's.
Which corner?
Fifth and Mill? It
Fifth
was
and
on
Mill?
Fifth and Mill.
Okay. All
It was
right.
a 2-story building. I'm
Yeah.
not sure what's there anymore. I haven't
All
been
right.
down there for
And
a
what are
while.
your memories about that
The
place?
cherry phosphate.
That's that
That
that's
was the
it.
only reason we'd
Nothing
go.
else. Okay.
It was the only reason we went there.
All right.
So it was just nostalgic for us as a treat, him and I.
Okay.
So it was
Alright.
fun. But we did hang out at Shelley's quite often, just because that's where he worked part-time.
All right. And what were the other things you did at Shelley's when you hung out there?
Oh gosh, I really don't remember. I know
Okay.
they had a little soda fountain in there, and their older daughter ran it.
Mhm.
Or worked at it, and I'd just sit there and chat. I went to school with one of their daughters, so if she was there, her and I would just chat, go upstairs at their little apartment and play.
Mhm.
But it was a very small store. It wasn't very big,
Yeah.
but it was a local grocery store,
Yeah.
which was kind of nice.
Yeah.
And it was sad when it closed. And there was a jewelry store right next door called Davenport's, and that's where my dad bought my mom a pair of earrings for their wedding anniversary. So
Oh.
that was kind of a memory for us too.
All right.
That whole area was very happening.
Yeah.
That's where we bought our jeans at the Boston store across the street. So it was quite a hangout down in that area.
And when did that store close? Do you remember?
I don't know.
Mm-hmm.
If you remember where Rula Bula was, it was right
Yeah.
down from there, a couple stores down.
Okay.
But I don't remember when they closed. I know the family moved out of Tempe up north somewhere.
All right.
That's the last I heard.
Okay.
So,
Yeah, we're eager to hear people's memories about
Yeah.
places that
Oh,
don't exist
absolutely.
anymore.
Yep.
So, tell us whatever else you think we need to know about your first family. You told us about your dad and the railroad.
My parents, my grandfather was from Ireland. He immigrated from Ireland to Canada. My dad's family is French speaking, so that side of my family was all French speaking, but none of us ever learned French. I did take Spanish for 3 or 4 years, so I could kind of pick up some things. But the biggest thing that happened in the family with that regard is they wanted to become citizens. And moving here in 1955, it took at least 5 years, or you had to wait 5 years, I believe. So in 1959, they applied for citizenship, and my older siblings were under 18, so they automatically became citizens, but they still had to be certified, and I don't know how that process worked. I was 5 years old. So when Tempe Daily News found out about our whole family becoming citizens, they said that was the first time that they were aware that a whole family
Really?
became citizens. I find that hard to believe.
Wow. Yeah.
So they came to the house, and I actually have a picture
Show us.
of my family. The immigration department gave them some memorabilia, pamphlets, and they gave them a flag. And it's hard to see in the picture, but so they had me sit on the floor and hold the flag. And then my siblings were in it, and there's my parents sitting in our living room. This would have been 1959. The funny thing about that is 5 years before my mom passed for Christmas, I got the flag and all the memorabilia. And of course I started crying. And I said, this shouldn't come to me. I was 5. She said, but you were holding it. It should be yours. I should go to my older sibling. He was the oldest. She said, no, you were holding that flag. You're getting it.
Wow.
So the flag
Wow.
is right here.
Okay. Very cool.
And then there's a booklet for citizenship they give to the people that become citizens. So I have some of the memorabilia from that. But that was a big deal for my family.
And that's the actual book that
And
you
this-
used back then.
Yeah, and this
Okay.
is the article that was in the paper.
All right. And what paper was that in?
Tempe Daily News, which was
Okay.
the local
Yeah.
paper.
All right.
So, and she wrote a note to me, says, yes, you are the one to get this. I wish I could put it all together for you, but you're good at that because I do scrapbooking.
I can tell.
That meant a lot to my parents to become citizens.
Yeah. Do you know what part of Ireland they were from?
My grandfather was born in Belfast.
Okay.
And we actually went back there about 5 years ago, another sister and I, and found where his parents lived, where his parents got married. So it was quite an experience for us.
So when he was in Belfast, was it as politically hot as
It was just starting. It was 1909 because he was born in 1900. So the family got the kids out of there just before the conflict got really bad. Thank goodness, because I don't know they would have got out of there.
Yeah.
It still goes on today,
Yeah.
just in a different aspect.
Yeah.
It's kind of scary when you go there,
Yeah.
but I'm just blessed that they got out of there.
Yeah. That's
So,
good.
yeah.
And where in Canada did they reside?
They went to the New Brunswick area. My mom is from the New Brunswick area, St. John, New Brunswick, and my dad was from the Quebec area, a little south, right at the tip of Maine. In fact, that's where he's laid to rest. My mom never learned French for some reason, I don't know, so she couldn't communicate with his family that well. He was in the Army when they met. He would come to the
Army?
Yeah.
Okay.
He would come to the base in her hometown, and that's how they met.
Okay.
So.
Very good. And so when did the family leave Canada to come here?
1954. They were actually pregnant for me when they left Canada, but I was born in Tucson.
Okay.
5 months after they moved here.
All right.
So I didn't have to become citizens. And it was strange because since my dad had tuberculosis and all my siblings and my mom were exposed, they had to get tested for it every year for 5 years.
Okay.
Once they moved here.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
I thought that was interesting. I didn't have to because I was never exposed to it.
Yeah.
And what's ironic about that is my sister, my older sister, worked at the TB sanitarium that used to be up at Papago Park.
Oh, my word.
I'm not sure what it is today, but she worked in the kitchen.
Okay. ASU owns that property now.
Oh, they do?
And they have some offices up there.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, she worked there for several years in the kitchen.
Okay.
So, and she had to be tested all the time as well, so.
Well, the state of Arizona still tests people for
Yeah,
TB
yeah.
for certain jobs.
True, that is
Yeah.
true.
Yeah.
That is true.
Yeah. Like if you're going to work in the prisons.
Well, they actually did that to me because I volunteered at Friendship Village for about 1.5 years and I had to have a TB test. Which makes sense.
Yeah. Yeah. Absolutely. Anything else about your
Oh my gosh.
parents or siblings or grandparents that?
My mom worked at Grant's, very short time, only during the holidays. But she never drove a car. She never even knew how to write a check. She was a stay-at-home mom for the most part. So my parents ended up divorcing in 73. And she had to get a job, so she got a job at the Tempe School District working at Gillen. She worked in the kitchen as a cook in Gillen. My son actually went there while she was a cook, so he couldn't get in trouble because his grandma worked there.
Okay.
So that was it. And she retired from the school district there.
Okay. And do you remember the address of the home where you lived in Tempe, where you grew up?
The first one we rented was on Howe and 10th Street. I have a couple pictures, but it doesn't really say much.
Yeah.
And I think from what I understand, it was either an apartment or a home behind a home, because those lots are pretty deep there, and a lot of people had 2 homes. And I'm not sure, I think we lived there 9 months, and then we moved to Beck and 5th Street and lived on Beck.
Okay.
So that's where we grew up, and we moved there in 1955, I believe.
All right.
So that was my neighborhood.
Yeah. So, yeah.
Yep.
Yeah. It sounds like you have a lot of great memories.
I do.
Are there other places besides the jewelry store and the grocery store, other places that you used to hang out as a kid?
Well, every Saturday, my sister and I walked up to Mill Avenue because that's where everything was. And it was a safe place. We always felt safe, and my parents felt safe that we were doing that. And then my grandfather would come every winter from Canada, and him and I would walk. He loved to sit at ASU and watch the women. He absolutely loved sitting at ASU, and he would just had a ball just watching the ladies. So here I am, a kid, and he liked to climb A Butte. And he has his name somewhere on a rock up there. I used to climb A Butte with him occasionally.
Oh, okay.
But that was a big thing with my grandfather. But going down there, we used to go to Pete's Fish and Chips, of course. Everybody went to Pete's. Rosita's Mexican restaurant, which is still at Hardy and University, was down the street from us on 5th and Beck in a little grocery store area. And it caught fire, and that's when they moved to Hardy and University. But we grew up, everybody in the neighborhood worked at Rosita's, except I didn't, but a lot of people did.
So when you walked to Mill Avenue, was it mostly to have something to eat, or did you
no, it's just, there used to be a hobby store down there that had slot car racing and things like that. We'd go watch that. My sister was a teenager, so she knew a lot of people that hung out down there. They just hung out. Tempe Beach, we'd go down that way to the park and see people at Tempe Beach. It's just kind of hanging around, something to do.
What was Tempe Beach like back then?
A blast. That's where we had all our picnics. I mean, I have some pictures of that too with me on, if I can find that. That's on the merry-go or whatever you call those rides. So that was old Tempe Beach Park.
Yeah.
My daughter actually also played softball down at the old softball fields. My sister worked at Tempe Beach for a little while, my younger sister.
Okay.
But I took swimming lessons down there.
Have you been to Tempe Beach in recent years?
I was just there last year, walked the cancer walk.
What do you think about the place now?
Sad.
Yeah. Okay.
There was a lot of memories down there.
Yeah.
But you know, I understand it. I think the thing that blows me away the most is the lake, because that's where we used to party.
Yeah.
They had Tempe police had a shooting range down there, and that was a party place for us in high school. And they used to ride quads down there. My ex-husband dove hunt down there.
Dove hunting?
Wow. Dove hunting in the early 70s, which I'm surprised was legal, but it was legal.
Yeah, you're not going to do much dove
So the
hunting.
river bottom was a hangout.
Yeah.
That's where we used to park to watch the fireworks show at ASU Stadium, because we couldn't afford to go in, so we parked down there and hang out.
Yeah, well, that area has certainly changed a lot since.
Absolutely. I never would have thought there'd be a skyline in Tempe.
Yeah.
Never would have thought that. It's sad, but I get it. I think the best thing they did was do light rail. Whenever we come to Tempe, we take the light rail.
Oh, okay.
It's just the best way to get there.
Yeah.
Avoid the parking. So that's always good.
Cool.
But there's just tons of places. Grants, 31 Flavors, we hung out there, which was by the Grants. At Tempe Center was another hub, because there was another drugstore there called Ryan Evans. There was a barber shop. There was El Rancho grocery store was in there that we used to go to all the time. There was a Dairy Queen down the street. So there was just plenty of things to do.
Okay.
The old City Hall used to have a bell outside, and they used to ring it at noon.
And where was the old City Hall?
Right where the new one is, where the
new one
pyramid is. Yeah,
Okay.
just a little. It might have been a little bit west, not much, and it was small. The American Legion was down there as well, because we used to go to bingo down there with my mom. In fact, Ladmo, if you've ever heard of Wallace and Ladmo, he called bingo there. He actually went to our church.
Oh, wow.
I went to Mount Carmel for 8 years. In fact, all my siblings, the older ones did, but all 6 of us graduated from Tempe High.
Okay, we're going to ask you about that in a minute. So, as you think about your elementary school years, what are the memories that stand out for you?
That's a tough one, because so this would have been in the 60s. Very strict Catholic. We were raised very strict Catholic. My aunt was a nun. My brother went to seminary right out of 8th grade to be a priest, but didn't get through the schooling. So when I got to public high school, I felt very sheltered. I felt like I didn't fit in. I didn't know how to talk to boys. But on the other side of the coin, I had a lot of memories of Mount Carmel, because my parents were very involved in the activities there. And I used to go with my dad all the time to set things up for bingo and dances, and everybody knew me as Little Annie. So, that part of it was really nice. I did have a really great teacher there, Mrs. Mannion. I had her twice. She wasn't a nun. She was a lay teacher.
Right. And what did she teach? A certain grade?
Yeah, I had her for 2nd grade and 6th grade.
Okay.
Why the difference? I don't know if she just moved around or whatever the reason was. But I met a lot of friends. I'm still friends with my 1st grade friend.
Wow.
We went to Tempe High together, and we're still friends.
Wow.
Yeah. And another ironic thing, when I retired from Bank of America, I went and worked for the Tempe School District, and the superintendent of the Tempe School District went to Mount Carmel with me. We were in the same grade.
Who was that?
Chris Bush.
Okay.
Christine Bush.
Okay.
So here I go full circle, and it kind of, my husband just is amazed whenever I run into people, how many people I know. You know them too? Because when people stick around Tempe, you just either recognize them or you know them.
Yeah.
It's kind of amazing.
Yeah. And where did he grow up?
My husband?
Yeah.
In California.
Okay.
So, but my first husband was my high school sweetheart.
Okay.
And he actually retired from City of Tempe.
Okay. So tell us about some of your favorite teachers at Tempe High.
Mr. Flanagan, he was my biology teacher.
What made him special?
He was just a hoot, made that class so much fun. I was a talker, and he didn't really reprimand me for that, which was very rare for me. But he was just a great teacher. And it's ironic, because when I volunteered at Friendship Village, he lived there. Him and his wife had moved there after he retired. He just passed away a few years ago.
Okay.
because we invited him to our 45th class reunion and he got sick and passed shortly after that.
Okay.
So
was Harry Mitchell one of your teachers?
I'd never had Harry,
Okay.
but Harry comes to all of our reunions. We have him every 5 years, and he knows a lot of people from our class and loves hanging out with us, so he's always there.
Okay.
And one of my classmates used to babysit his children.
Oh.
So, yeah.
So, and who are some of the other teachers that stand out from Tempe?
Oh my gosh, good or bad. Mrs. Garcia was my Spanish teacher. I had her twice because it took 3 years. I wanted to teach Spanish because I thought living in Arizona, that would be a perfect language to know and get a job. But by the 4th year, because I had Mrs. Garcia twice, and she actually had all us kids at her house to make tamales. And she would speak in Spanish while we were making tamales,
Oh, wow.
which they wouldn't do that today, which was really a treat back then. But it was just too difficult the 4th year. You couldn't speak or write any English, and I wasn't ready for that, so
Okay.
I never pursued it.
Okay. How about extracurricular activities in high school?
None.
None. Okay.
And the reason is because being from Catholic school for 8 years, I didn't know how to participate.
Okay.
I did get in band.
Oh,
And
well, there you go.
I was in the JV. And what's about Mount Carmel did not have a band opportunities. So rural school used to be where the district office is now. They partnered with Mount Carmel and allowed us to walk down there to take music. So I took the flute.
Yeah.
And we'd walk down there once a week.
Yeah.
So I was in the JV band, and I tested and got into the marching band, but I quit because I wanted to hang out at the football games with my friends.
Okay.
So I didn't pursue it after that.
Okay. Very good. Tell us about, did you have any jobs when you were in high school?
I worked at the laundromat down the street from our house, and I babysat.
What did you do in the laundromat?
Just worked the desk,
Okay.
giving change, fixing the machines if they broke, just something simple.
So you got to meet a lot of people.
I did,
Yeah.
but I knew most of them because it was a neighborhood laundromat, so,
Okay.
you know, so I knew most of them.
All right.
Yeah. My brother worked for UDI. I don't know if you remember hearing about UDI. And he would get off work at like midnight and walked home. And it was quite a ways. And from what I hear, the police chief or a local policeman, his name was Mr. Godby here, he either became the police chief, he'd pick up my brother and bring him home.
Oh, wow.
Just so he wouldn't have to walk
Yeah.
if he saw him on his beat. So they wouldn't do that today either.
Yeah. That's a great story.
Yeah.
Yeah. Wow. And any other jobs in high school?
Oh my gosh. Yeah, my senior year, I took a secretarial class because I was getting out of school at 11 o'clock, and they found you a job. They would link you up to interviews, teach you how to interview. In fact, I was in Tempe Daily News again. They wanted to promote the class, and they picked me and another gal I went to school with, and had an article about our class in the Tempe Daily News. So that's me and the other gal. And there was a gentleman in Tempe that went to Tempe High. His name is Doug Royce, and he would take seniors and work for his insurance company. So I get to this interview, and I know him. He lived next door to my cousins. So I got the job. And I was like a part-time secretary for him for about 6 months. And then a few years later, I had a baby, got married and everything. He hired me back. So I worked for him twice. And I still kind of talk to him quite often because he's in the Tempe Exchange Club. And they do the healing fields. So I volunteer with that. So I still kind of stay in touch with him.
Okay. And then how about after school? I mean, when you finished schooling, what were your jobs?
I worked at Ambassador Leather Goods, which was on Broadway, and I think it was Roosevelt. It was a mail order company. In fact, a lot of Tempe people worked there because you could walk if you still lived in Tempe. Worked there for like 2 years. Then I worked for Apache Optical, which made glasses for Lee Optical, if you remember the eyeglass store. So I made contact lenses there, and that was on Hardy and Broadway. I'm trying to think. Then in 1984, I got a job at Arizona Bank, which was on Mill Avenue, but I worked for the Operations Center, which is on 48th and Southern. and that was considered Tempe, and I worked there for 19 years, which became B of A. They merged several times, so that was my biggest job. And then when I left there, I waited 2 years, and I worked for the Tempe School District. And I retired, worked there 10 years, and retired from there.
And what did you do for the Tempe School District?
I started in the district office part-time, and then went to be a teacher's assistant, because my daughter got her degree at ASU, a teaching degree, so I went, I kind of had a passion for teachers. So I became a teacher's assistant, and then I worked admin in the district office.
All right. And who was superintendent while you worked there?
Well, Christine Bush.
Okay.
There was another one before that. I cannot remember his name, but she took over when he left. And the funny thing about that was when I got the teacher's assistant job, there was a teacher that broke her foot, and she was in a wheelchair and needed an aide. That's how I got the job. So when I met her in the office, I went to high school with her. We knew each other from high school. Is that ironic? I stayed with her for like 7 years.
Small world.
Yeah.
So of all those jobs, what was your favorite one?
B of A.
Yeah, why?
Not that the school district, I worked in credit card fraud.
Oh.
And the days were never the same. Every day was something different. And I really loved investigating and finding out, digging into the files and getting into the fraud part of it. I just found it very interesting. If I had life to do over, I'd be a CSI forensics. I love it.
Okay. There are a lot more tools today than there were back then. Yeah. Cool. And then you mentioned your children and your current spouse. Tell us more about them.
Well, my current spouse moved here from California, so but my ex-husband grew up in Tempe. He went to Mitchell School. And he was the father of my 2 kids. Both my kids and my grandson went to Tempe schools. They graduated from Fees, Gilman. My daughter got her teaching degree and ended up teaching at the school. She went to elementary school. She taught at Aguilar for a few years, which was kind of neat for her. And we just stayed in Tempe. We wanted the kids to finish in Tempe, so we stuck around in Tempe so they could finish school in Tempe. And they really have a hard time seeing what it's become. But
yeah, we all romanticize what life was like in places where we grew up. And
yeah. My son is still around, but my daughter lives in Alaska, so that's quite different from Arizona.
What drew her to Alaska?
Military with her husband.
Oh, okay.
But she could never live here anymore. It's too hot. She can't handle it.
So she plans to stay in Alaska?
Well, so far.
Okay.
We've been there 18 years, I think.
Wow.
So.
Okay. Yeah. That's a different experience.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's fun to visit.
Yeah, in the summer. Yeah. Have you been there recently?
This summer.
This summer?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Been there once in the wintertime. We went at Christmas once.
Yeah.
It's mostly been in the summer.
Yeah. What's your favorite thing to do there besides hang out with your daughter?
The glacier cruises. We do day glacier cruises. Yeah, that's really nice.
Yeah.
Although you can tell global warming is hitting. That's the sad part. That was proof the second time I went.
Yeah.
Because you go to the same spot, and there's a big difference.
Yeah. So are there in more recent, you talked about your early years, but how about in more recent years, the places in Tempe you like to go to for eating or entertainment?
Oh my gosh. Anymore, I don't know what's down there. I really don't. We still go to Pete's on Apache.
Okay.
When my son turned 40, he used to complain through the years because he never got a Ladmo bag from Ladmo and Wallace. So when he turned 40, I said, where do you want to go eat for your birthday? He said, I want to go to Pete's. So I made him a Ladmo bag. You probably don't know what a Ladmo bag is. I made him a Ladmo bag, and I ordered a Ladmo t-shirt that had the painted tie on it. And I made a Ladmo bag for him and gave it to him at Pete's Fish and Chips for his 40th birthday. That was fun. Okay. He just got the biggest kick out of that. But the old Pete's that used to be on Mill, we used to call it Grease Pit. Because back then they just didn't, I don't know, the food just didn't inspect the restaurants like they do today. It was just full of grease. But you know, we loved it. We absolutely, that was a staple. And Rosita's, we still go to Rosita's. That's kind of family tradition for us too.
Okay.
As we grew up on that. Monty's we can't go to anymore.
Yeah.
I used to go to Rulabula. We'd have our reunions a couple times there. Bandersnatch, we had a couple times there. So everything we went to pretty much is closed.
Mm-hmm. And what do you miss the most about all that stuff from back then?
It's not familiar anymore. It was kind of interesting though. At our 40th reunion, we had a gentleman that put a scavenger hunt together, and we had lunch at a restaurant down there, and I cannot think of the name of it. And it was all downtown Tempe that he put the scavenger hunt together. And there's a lot more still there that I didn't realize. And there's some type of a little thing for the Harry Mitchell or Mark. I'm not sure. It's like, we went into some of the head shops, that's what I call them. Mm-hmm. And then we went to the Hackett House, mm-hmm. which we used to partner with at the school district. They sponsored the school district geography bee. Okay. So we'd go there quite often, and they used to hold that in the chambers, the council chambers. And I was in charge of that with my boss. But I think it's just, I'm not familiar with much down there anymore. Okay. So right. I did tour the flour mill when I was in Girl Scouts. Oh, okay. That was pretty cool. Got a free bag of flour. Yeah, and there are plans to refurbish that. That would be exciting. Yeah. That would be, and I would do that in a heartbeat. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, I agree. So besides dining in Tempe in recent years, have you gone to entertainment venues in Tempe in recent years? We go to Gamage once in a while. But when I volunteer, I try to volunteer downtown Tempe, because then I get my Tempe fix, I guess you could say. So I volunteered at the Healing Fields 2 or 3 or 4 times, and that is just the most emotional thing anybody could do. The Rock and Roll Marathon in the beer garden, I volunteered there for a while. I do the cancer walk down there. I've gone to the Tempe Center for the Arts with schools. We went several times there, and I also went to a play. Don't go to the football games. I never got into that. I'm trying to think of what else we do down there. That's really, the Arts Festival. Arts Festival. But we take the light rail. Yeah. It's just the best thing to do. Don't go to Macayo's because they closed. We used to go there every year for the Tempe High Buffalo. They have an annual alumni, and since they closed it, we don't have it there anymore. Yeah. So the Healing Fields, when you volunteer there, what do you do? Whatever they want me to do. Right. Put the flags up, take the flags down, put the ribbons on. Have you ever been to it? No. Oh, it's amazing because they have certain colors of flags that represent children, the firefighters. Then they have the boots that sit under the flags of the firefighters and police responders that lost their life. It's quite emotional. Yeah. I think it's brings the community together because they got all the ROTC, they got ASU students that help. Anybody and everybody in their uniforms, so you know who they are down there helping. It's amazing. Okay. Yeah. Well, thanks for encouraging us to go there. Yeah, absolutely. So as you have traveled around Arizona or outside of Arizona, have any of those travels helped you reflect on your experiences in Tempe in any ways? Maybe when you go somewhere else, you think, oh, I wish Tempe would do that, or you go somewhere else and I think, Tempe does it better than that, or any of those things? The couple things that stick in my mind is I love to tour churches and old historic buildings, so when I always look up the tourism for a city that I'm going to, and I just don't know that we have that as much in Tempe. There's not much, like the old Mount Carmel Church. Can you tour that? I'd love to go through that. We went there when we first moved to Tempe. My younger sister was baptized there, and we'd have donuts in the basement. I would love to go through that church. Same with the old Methodist one that's down there. My ex used to go there, and I would love to tour those churches, but I don't think they do that. I don't even know if they're still there. Okay. Same with the flour mill, and I know they're working on that, but that's the part of Tempe I wish they would have preserved some history, houses or buildings or whatever. Yeah. So that's what I miss. Other than that, I do feel that small town feel. It brings back memories when I do travel and it's a small town. Right? This is just like it was when I grew up. Mm-hmm. So you see Tempe as a small town. I mean, if it has a small town feel for you. It does. Even when I go down there, because I know what used to be there and how it felt, and all my memories are still there. So I still feel it when I go down there. It just doesn't look the same. Yeah. So. that's okay.
You said a little bit about this, but is there anything else you can say about how you have felt at any time in your life connected to the community of Tempe as a whole? You talked about your neighborhood a lot and how connected you were there, but to the city as a whole, have you felt connected?
I think it's because I still run into people that I knew or knew their family or lived in Tempe. Like the young lady I just met in the lobby. We lived in the same neighborhood. I never knew her then, but that's what I just find amazing, that there's still people that know people that know people. And we have the memories to talk about and share with each other.
Yeah.
That's not going to go away.
Yeah.
So I think that's the best part, and that's why it's hard for me to leave Arizona.
Yeah.
Even living out in Queen Creek. That's where I live today, and I still run into people, even out there. My husband gets so frustrated. He said, "You know everybody." But it's amazing. I just get the biggest kick out of that. And I'm still very close to a lot of my high school friends. I'm on our reunion committee, and we get together, 2 times a year maybe.
The whole class? Your whole
As
class?
many as we can get together, the ones that are still around, and some people come in from out of town, and we have happy hours and things like that.
How big was your graduating class?
500 or 600, I want to say. I'm not positive about that, but that's around that.
And for the 5-year reunions, how many people typically will show up?
Oh, it was huge way back then, but we just had our 50th last year, and I think there was 100 and some that were there, and that's a pretty good number.
Yeah, that's pretty good.
That's a pretty good number.
Yeah.
And it was funny because we had to tour the high school. We asked if we could tour the high school, so they did accommodate us. And of course, it helps that we have a classmate that knows the Arregondos, so they helped us get in. But 2 of our classmates broke records on the track when they were in high school.
Who were they? Remember?
Paul Taysom was one, and Doug Schreiner.
Right.
And they wanted to run the track at our 50th reunion, and they did. All of us went down, and they came around, and we all clapped as they came across it. It was amazing.
So what events did they run in high school?
I don't remember.
Short distance or longer distance?
I don't know.
Remember.
I
Okay.
do not remember.
All right.
But he had a grin from ear to ear after that. It was pretty cool.
Yeah. You know, it's amazing listening to people talk about their high school graduating classes. You come from one, obviously, where people stay together. My high school graduating class the same way, and then other people, they don't.
Yeah.
They never get together, and I'm just wondering, what do you think makes the difference there?
Oh gosh, I really don't know. It's hard to say. I don't know, because even classes before and after us don't have what we have.
Yeah.
So I just, maybe the core people that started everything just are very passionate about keeping it together. And it helps that a lot of we invite teachers. There's several that are still alive, believe it or not. Our principal is still alive, which I worked with his daughter at Ward School for a long time and did not realize that was his daughter for a couple years until her dad was my principal.
Okay.
And he's still living. He's in his 90s.
Wow.
And he has come to our reunions. So.
That's great.
Yeah.
That's great.
The school's changed quite a bit.
Yeah.
But like, they don't have auto mechanics, and they don't have, I don't even think they have choir.
Okay.
They have band, but I don't think they have choir.
Wow. Excuse me. How have attitudes toward cultural diversity changed in Tempe from when you were small to now?
I'm really not sure, because I don't come down there to interact with a lot of people. So I'm really not too sure what the diversity is like today.
Okay.
I hear a lot of real positive things about the schools and how they make sure that diversity is working, which I think is really good, because I worked for the school district and there was always a lot of positive about that.
Good.
But as far as like the downtown ASU area, I'm really not sure. Since everything is thriving, I can't imagine there being a problem. We never had one when I was young. There was not a lot of, everybody got along. A lot of Hispanics in Tempe, and they were just all part of the family. My parents had a godchild that was Hispanic, and every Christmas Eve, my dad and I would go deliver gifts to the godchildren. There was 4 of them. And there was a Hispanic family, and we got tamales in return. So I would hope that's still going on today.
Yeah, I think it is.
Yeah, I think it is too.
I think it is. So you talked about some of your volunteer activities. Are there other ways that you've been engaged in similar kinds of activities in Tempe
Oh my gosh.
over the years?
When I was raising my kids, it was really hard for me to get involved.
Yeah.
You know, because I was working and they were going to
Yeah.
school. So it really wasn't until after I retired that I started volunteering more. So it was kind of difficult.
Yeah.
I tried, but it was difficult.
Yeah.
I would volunteer at their schools.
Yeah. Yeah.
If I
Well,
had
that's
to.
important.
Yeah.
That's
Yeah.
important. Yeah. How would you like your family and friends to remember you?
Oh my gosh. Staying connected to the community or staying connected to old friends and memories, and it's very important to me, even with my family. You know, like the train situation today, you know, just the opportunity to talk about our experiences in Tempe is just important to me.
Mm-hmm.
So I try really hard to do that and stay in touch with my old friends.
Okay. All right. Is there anything else related to your life in Tempe, your family, your work, or other experiences in Tempe that we haven't talked about yet that you want to
Oh my
talk
gosh.
about?
I really don't know what it would be. Back then, when I was young, there weren't cell phones. And just, my dad was a visitor. He loved to visit with people, and you just show up at their house. Or you walk in. No doors were locked. And we just don't have that today. And the younger generation today doesn't understand that.
Mm-hmm.
And when you talk to them about it, they almost don't believe you.
Yeah. I grew up in a rural community where people, after dinner, after the chores are done, would just show up at your house
Exactly.
in the evening.
Yep.
And now people don't even call without texting first to see if it's okay to call.
You wouldn't dare show up at someone's house at the
Yeah.
last minute.
Yeah. Is there anything else that I've neglected to ask you that you really want to talk about? I think you've shown all your documents that you brought along.
The only other thing is when I worked for Doug Royce, he also was a campaign headquarters for Dick Neuheisel, where he ran for mayor of Tempe.
Oh.
So again, I was in the Tempe Daily News walking around the new city hall with Dick Neuheisel
Oh, cool.
and a gentleman named Ray Gamboa, which was a very well-known family in Tempe as well. So I don't know why I was always getting picked to be in the Tempe Daily News. But
Oh, very good. Very good. Well, at this point, we turn it over to other people in the room
Okay.
to see what questions they have
Sure.
to ask. So,
I just have to tell you about my family's train connection.
Oh.
My family worked for the railroad, but they lived by Promontory Summit in northern Utah, where the Transcontinental Railroad came together.
wow.
And so one of my grandmothers was the champion for that for 40 years. She would write to the President of the United States and to Congress members and anyone she could think of to try to get it to be a national park, and it finally was because of her
That's
work.
exciting.
So yeah, have you ever been there?
No, I have not.
Yeah.
My dad was a train dispatcher, which is equal to an air traffic controller for the planes. So he
Right.
could never leave his desk.
Yeah.
And they worked off ticker tape machines. I have a
Super
picture of him, and they worked off ticker tape back then. Wow, that's pretty neat.
Yeah. So that's the Golden Spike spot.
Yeah, yeah. I'm not. We used to go to Utah because we had relatives there, but we never, even Dad never talked about it.
yeah, and we interviewed someone for the series who had some memorabilia from there.
That's
Oh,
right.
Yeah.
wow.
I was
Including-
jealous.
Yeah, me too. Yeah.
That's funny. Back then, we couldn't hang out too much outside because that's when hobos were rampant. Which today we probably call them homeless people, but they were all over the train depot.
In Tempe?
Phoenix. In
In
Phoenix.
okay.
Tempe wasn't so bad,
Okay.
from what I recall.
Yeah. Thank you
Yeah.
for sharing all your memories. It's really
Oh,
fascinating.
thank you, thank you.
You have
I
some
miss it
long
sometimes.
time connections.
Yeah.
Here.
I was just going to ask, you talked a little bit about, high school years or right around there. And Duane did go into this, but just what were some of the really fun things that you did that, created those memories and those bonds, like with your high school friends and others around that time? Seems like when you grow up, that area when we're in high school, right? It's
It's like what we did during high school.
what were the fun things that everybody wanted to go do, like like you mentioned the football games or
you want me to be honest with you? Partying. I didn't start doing that until our senior year, but that was a huge thing. Was down in the river bottom was keg parties, and before Ahwatukee was built, there used to be a section there off Warner or Ray or somewhere. We'd go back in there, and there's picnic areas, and people would have keggers up there.
It's just the desert in
Yeah.
Ahwatukee then?
Yeah, but one time we went up there to go to a kegger, and that was when they put blockades up, and you could no longer go back because they were starting on Ahwatukee. Japanese flower gardens. I don't know if you've ever heard about those. We used to drive down there all the time. That's where I got flowers from my boyfriend because they were cheap. And you could smell them all over Tempe, even though it was in Phoenix. Just a wonderful smell.
Mm-hmm. Wow.
Trying to think of what else. It was mostly partying. Dances. And when I went to Catholic school, they did invite us to some of the dances at the schools, even because we didn't have them at Catholic school. So that was a big thing too, was dances. But other than that because I didn't do any extracurricular.
Yeah.
And I got to know most everybody in high school through my boyfriend.
Mm-hmm.
He was on the football team, the JV football, so he knew a lot of people, and hence they knew me because I wasn't involved in anything.
So were students from other high schools in the area, did they go to those same places to party? Do you know?
If they did, you probably stayed away from them. There was a big rival between Tempe and McClintock. It was, and Mesa High kind of got in there a little bit too.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, there was quite a rivalry. So if you were, you kind of stayed away from them.
Okay,
Yeah.
all right, very good.
You wouldn't admit you were friends with McClintock people.
So would you call your friends, or you just would go over their houses and show up?
A little bit of both. Most of the ones that lived in my neighborhood, every Saturday we got together. We trick-or-treated together, rode bikes everywhere. We played outside all the time. We were never in the house. Nobody had fences in their backyard, so it was a big football field for the guys, that kind of thing. So that was when I was littler. But high school, I was never home. So not until the light switch came on the front porch, and that's when you came in.
Yeah.
So I miss Tempe, the old Tempe,
Yeah.
but at least we can talk about the memories.
Yeah. These interviews help to keep those memories alive for
Absolutely.
people. So thank you, Anne, very much for helping
Appreciate
to
it.
keep memories alive
Thank you.
for other people who've lived in Tempe. Appreciate your time and your stories this evening.
Thank you. I look forward to listening to some other videos. I've been watching some of them.
Thank you.
Very nice. Thank
Good.
you.
Good.